long time ago, when I was just born, my grandmother made a patchwork quilt. The quilt was made of scraps of fabric that were left over from all the things my grandmother had ever sewn. There was a yellow patch from my grandfather's old coat, and a red triangle from a party dress that my mother wore when she was little. There was even a blue circle from my baby blanket. Grandmother sewed all these little pieces and fabric patches together until the colours and shapes grew into a blanket big enough to wrap yourself up in on cold winter nights. My grandma was very old, and when she died, my mother folded up the quilt and put it away in a big wooden chest up in the attic. When I was 10 years old, my mother was spring cleaning, which was odd because she did this all summer. I was in the attic and I saw the old chest and I decided to peek inside. The lid was heavy. When I opened the chest, there was a wonderful smell of cedar chips and something like apples. It was a grandma smell. I was about to look inside when Mother called me.
Robin, come down from that dusty old attic. Right now, young man.
I wanted to see what kind of treasure the big box held, but when my mother called in that sort of voice, I thought I'd better do what she said. I hurried downstairs, but I had left the chest open. Then a wonderful thing happened. The sunlight came through the attic window. Its rays touched the bright colours of Grandmother's quilt. And the quilt woke up from its long sleep. The quilt yawned and stretched and looked around. Then the little blue patch said,
"Where are we? What is this place?"
And the yellow square answered,
"It is most definitely someplace new. I do not remember being here before."
Then the red triangle said,
"I'm not sure where we are, but we've been sleeping in this trunk for a very, very long time. Any place is a new place."
"Well,"
said the blue circle,
"this new place looks like a nice place. And if it's a nice place, I'd like to live there instead of here. So I'm going to get out and look around."
This upset the yellow square, and he said,
"That is circular logic. You may not go exploring by yourself. You are part of this quilt, and you are a member of our little fabric family. This is your home, and it is where you belong. It's where we all belong."
Then the red triangle, who never took sides in an argument, said,
"Maybe we could all go and see the new place together. We could always come back home again later."
"Oh, please,"
said the blue circle.
"It'll be so much fun."
"And we all might learn new things."
The yellow square thought a while and reluctantly agreed.
"Very well, but we must go together, and we should definitely come back soon, without a doubt."
And so the blue circle and the red triangle and the yellow square pulled away from the quilt, climbed out of the box, across the attic floor, and up to the attic window, where they all stood looking out at the wide, wide world outside.
"It's all so bright here,"
said the blue circle. The red triangle added,
"And there's so much to see."
The yellow square was a little uncomfortable with the newness of it all, and he said,
"Well, now we have seen what there is to see. Now we should definitely go back."
But the blue circle had made up his mind to look around, and so without another thought he rolled right off the edge of the windowsill and floated to the ground.
"See you around,"
the blue circle called, and then it quickly rolled away to see what he could see. The yellow square was very surprised by this and was determined to catch the blue circle and bring it back home. He called,
"Come back, or I'll go after you and bring you back."
But it was too late. The circle was far beyond sight. Then the red triangle said to the yellow square,
"Perhaps if we both went into the world to explore, we might meet our little brother the circle along the way."
To which the square replied,
You have a very good point. Then let us go.
and with that the two jumped from the window into the soft grass below. Then the square said,
I will go this way. It will go quicker if you went the other way. We'll meet back here later.
That sounds fair and square to me.
said the triangle, and the two shapes went in opposite directions to find the blue circle and to learn about the wide, wide world. The yellow square trudged along, straight ahead. He didn't look to the left, and he didn't look to the right. The square's path remained straight. The ground below was hard and flat, and the square began to enjoy its journey. Before long, the square found himself in a field full of flowers. The square had never seen a flower before. It stood and stared at the flower, who swayed in the breeze in a very calm, relaxed, and unsquare-like way.
Excuse me.
Said the square.
Excuse me. I beg your pardon. I'm trying to talk to you. Do you have to move around like that? It's very hard to talk to you when you wiggle so much.
I'm very sorry,
Giggled the flower.
but I can't help myself. It's such a beautiful day, and the breeze keeps me swaying from one side to the other.
That must be terribly uncomfortable to you.
Said the square.
Oh no, it's very pleasant and relaxing. You should try it sometime.
I don't know how to let myself relax that much, and I'm not positive that I would like it.
Oh,
Said the flower, not really knowing what to say. The square watched her sway for a moment more, and he began to wonder how it was possible to move that way. He said,
Excuse me, if I did try to let myself sway in the breeze, I mean, if I wanted to, how would I begin?
well, just let your corners droop
suggested the flower.
and let yourself go. Oh dear, you poor thing.
The flower helped the yellow square up again. Then she said,
Now, try it again, but this time, for goodness sake, keep your roots planted.
The square almost told the flower that he didn't have square roots, but he decided to say nothing at all and to just try again. Soon, with some practice and the help of a warm summer's breeze, the yellow square relaxed, wavered, and began to sway. The flower and the square spent the afternoon watching the clouds and the flying birds, and then listening to the breezes. After a long while, the square said to the flower,
My brother, the blue circle, went off exploring this morning. I ran after him to bring him back home. But now I think I understand why he wanted to go. Thank you, flower.
You're welcome. I enjoyed the visit. Good luck, Square.
The square began his journey again. But now that he could bend, he let himself look right. He let himself look left. And he learned to see beauty all around. And though he met many flowers on his travels, the square always thought warmly of the first flower, the one who taught him how to enjoy the world. The red triangle, in the meantime, walked straight as an arrow in the other direction, a little afraid of the world ahead, yet he forged ahead, keeping his wits sharp and staying on his toes. Before long, the triangle's attention was directed to the deep, soothing sounds of the ocean's waves crashing to the shore. in the soft, moist sands beneath his feet. The triangle looked out at the ocean. He had never seen an ocean before, and he didn't know what it was. And so the triangle asked the sleeping starfish who was lying on the beach,
Excuse me, but what is that very big thing out there? And why is it wide and flat? And why does it shimmer so?
The starfish slowly raised itself from the sand and looked at the triangle. The triangle suddenly realized that he had never seen a starfish either, and he was piercingly afraid. The starfish saw the triangle shivering and said,
Don't be afraid, little cousin. Can't you see how alike we are?
The red triangle looked carefully and said,
Why, you have points, just like me. Although you must be very wise to have so many.
Wisdom has nothing to do with making a point, little one.
said the starfish.
To answer your question, the wide, flat, shimmering thing is called the sea. It is also called the ocean. But I call it home.
Something that big should have many names,
said the red triangle. Then he asked the starfish,
What is home? I'm not sure I know what that is, although I like how that word sounds.
Home isn't just a word, little cousin, and it isn't just a place. Home is a feeling. Are there others like you in the place where you live?
asked the starfish quietly. The red triangle thought and said,
I have brothers, but they're not like me at all. My brother, the circle, is very self-involved. He barely talks to me. And my other brother, the square, tries to boss us all around.
The starfish smiled in a starfishy way and said,
And what are you like, little triangle? How would you describe yourself?
I'm not really sure. Perhaps that is why I went exploring, so I could learn more about myself.
The starfish smiled again and said,
When you have learned who you are, and what you like, and how you feel, you will also understand what home means. In the ocean, which is my home, there are many others like me, who are also very different. They are my brothers, and when they are all around me talking, I get confused too. I forget who I am and what I like. And so I swim to the shore, my own quiet place, and I look out at the sea. And after a while, I remember who I am and what I like, and that's when I go home.
The red triangle thought about this and said,
I think I understand. Home means being someplace you feel safe, and someplace you have to leave before you know what it really means.
The starfish nodded, and they looked out at the water, enjoying one another's company and their own. The blue circle wandered aimlessly around, happily bounding up a hillside. Before long, the circle noticed he was climbing up and up and up until he could see the unbroken curve of the horizon. If someone told the circle that the world was round, he wouldn't have been a bit surprised. When the circle arrived at the top of the mountain, he noticed something he had never noticed before. It was a rock, a very ordinary one, but it was round, like a circle, although all dented. And it was smooth, as he was, but in some places the rock was rough. And what was really strange was how cold the rock was, because the circle had always believed all circles were warm. Finally, the circle said to the rock,
Hey, what happened to you?
and the rock said,
What hasn't happened to me should be the question. Forgive me for asking, but what kind of person are you going around talking to rocks?
and the blue circle, who was very sure of himself, said,
I am a blue circle made of a warm, soft cloth, and I have come up this mountain exploring all by myself, and that's what I am. But what are you? Because you're certainly not a circle like me.
What I am is a rock. And talking to you, I am a rock getting a headache. Shh. Sit down. Don't talk so much. And listen, you may learn something.
The blue circle was so surprised at this, he sat down, and the rock began to tell his story.
To look at me now, I can tell you're not too impressed. And why should you be? I'm a rock. People don't pay much attention to rocks. They kick us, skip us across lakes, use us to make their flower beds look terrific. But they don't pay much attention to us, which is a shame, because you can learn a lot from a rock, let me tell you.
Like what?
Said the circle.
Don't you just sit there?
Today I'm sitting here. Last month I was over there. 18,000 years ago I was in Mesopotamia. So don't you get smart about you just sit there.
You mean you've been other places?
Certainly, I travel a lot. Although usually it's when somebody picks me up and throws me. I hate that. The flights are nice, but those landings.
I like to travel too,
Said the blue circle.
I left home to explore just ages ago. You should have seen my brothers trying to chase after me.
Wait a minute. You have a family, a nice little home, and you ran off without letting them know where you're going. Hi, they say rocks are cold. Don't you think they are maybe a little worried about you?
The circle stood up, suddenly worried.
I hadn't really thought about that. I was just trying to have fun.
You'll forgive me for saying so, but aren't you being a little selfish? I mean, if you hadn't run off, right now you could be exploring with your brothers. Don't you think they'd like to have fun too?
The blue circle suddenly felt a little lonely. He really missed his brothers. Suddenly the circle said,
I'm sorry, but I should get home now.
Sure. And give my regards to your family. And come back and visit anytime. I've got 1,000,000 years of stories saved up, and nobody's breaking my door down to hear them.
Goodbye,
said the blue circle, rolling quickly home to join his family.
Bye. Have a safe trip. You know, that's one thing about being a rock. You certainly meet some interesting people.
And so, after wandering many fields that only went on and on, the square started back to be with his family. The triangle, after seeing all of the sea that he could stand to see, ran back to the place where he felt safe. And the circle, who had just learned that the world was too wide for one to face alone, began the long roll towards those who really loved him.
No matter which way you go, the shortest way home is the one you know. No matter how far you stray, you'll never get lost when you know the way back. Home's where you hang your hat. Home is where you feed the cat. Home is where you sleep at night. Home where everything's alright. Home is where you wanna be. Home is with your family. Home, sweet home.
While the shapes had been away, the quilt grew more and more worried until she could stand it no more and jumped from the attic to find them. She looked and was about to give up when she saw the red triangle running towards her. The square, who was actually skipping, turned the corner and ran squarely into them. Then the blue circle, who was a little afraid that his brothers would be angry at him, saw his quilt and his brothers rolling on the ground and laughing, and quickly joined in. And when they had all tucked themselves back into the quilt, they all finally felt at home. I remember finding the quilt in the garden that day, and though it was getting cool outside, the quilt was very bright and very warm looking indeed. Mother said that I could keep the quilt, and I still have it today, and whenever I feel alone, I snuggle into it, and I feel right at home.